Performance routines. Now it's very important to realize that performance routines can be implemented pre, during, and post training as well as competition. The most important thing to remember is when it comes to competition time, you shouldn't implement your routine for the first time on a competition day. It is very important to make sure that you've also practiced your routine to make sure that this routine actually suits you as an athlete. Think about what does your routine at the moment consist of. You can write it down or you can just think about it. You need to take advantage of a pre-game routine because firstly, a routine can help you get in the zone. It can help you get organized. It elevates your mood and it lowers anxiety. A pre-routine can be, for example, listening to music, reading, watching YouTube videos. So often you'll find athletes watching YouTube videos of successful athletes performing the same task that they will be performing during their training or competition. It can also be something like getting your gear ready. So when you get your gear ready, you know you're organized for your competition. If it has to do with your training, you could be writing your training program down. You should also know what is expected of you for that day. Once you know, you go in there ready to face whatever you are facing for your competition, for your training, and this makes you game ready. Routines during your training or your competition. This could include your warm-up. And again, this could be in your training or your competition. Some people like listening to music during their warm-ups. The way you walk up to the barbell. So if you're a weightlifter, for example, this could be a very specific routine that you have. Some people say a little prayer before they go up. Some people do a little exercise if the coach tells them to complete their pull. They'll often just lift up their arms like they're going to pull, but not with a weight. The very same thing goes for high jumpers. A lot of times you'll see them visualize they jump before they actually do the actual jump. It could be something like having your shake during your training session. Now, where can pre-performance routines be used? Pre-performance routines have seen to be performed up to 48 hours prior to the task and as close to 5 minutes before the task is executed. This is another example for when I said earlier, getting your gear ready, writing your program down, looking at videos. You don't necessarily have to do this exactly before your training. This could be done, like the example says here, 48 hours prior to the task at hand. Now, this is closely linked to our final theory of the sport psychology, which is self-talk. And self-talk is what we'll be talking about later on in the slides. This is the way you talk to yourself, and I'll also be giving you examples of how to do so. Very specific words that are motivating, and it could also be words to psych you up before your event. Now, how to develop an effective pre-performance routine. Now again, these are just examples, and you should be thinking how you can implement this to your own sport. Now, a pre-performance routine is often used before an athlete engages in a specific skill. A pre-performance routine will have a number of steps which will involve specific thoughts and behaviors. Now, the routine must include two parts: your behavior, and it should involve your thoughts. You should keep your thoughts short and simple. For example, when you're going to perform a rugby kick, just before the kick, or you're kicking for the poles, you cannot be thinking how exactly you should be doing this in your mind, because you've practiced it hundreds of times. The most important thing here is to keep your thoughts short. So maybe you could be thinking step left, stay over the ball, something like that, just to remind you of the small little thing that will help you to kick the ball for the poles. Make the routine individual to you. So this should be your routine, not someone else's routine or how you've seen your opponent does their little routine. Make sure that this is your routine and that works for you. Use imagery to help you visualize how you would execute the skill. This is like the example I used earlier of the weightlifter as well as the high jumper. Okay, see yourself performing the skill successfully. This is the most important part. Apply breathing to help you control arousal levels. When it comes to your arousal levels, sometimes just before a very fast event or a very fast task that needs to be performed in your sport, the heart rate could be increasing. To keep your heart rate at bay and to keep you nice and focused, I often tell my athletes to focus on breathing. When you focus on breathing, you get yourself grounded and you also get your heart rate under control. Try not to avoid any steps in your routine. So that is why it's important to make sure you practice your routine in training. Be consistent with the behaviors used in your routine. So don't have one routine the one day, another routine the next day. Make it specific and stick to the routine. Focus on the things that you can control: your behavior, your thoughts, your mental state, and your physical state. Most often there are things that are out of control, and when things are out of our control, athletes tend to focus on that, like for example weather, or for weightlifting what barbell is being used. Every single athlete in the competition will be using that barbell, so you need to focus on what you can control and make the best out of that. The routine must be task specific, so you cannot be performing a routine that could be for what you do your homework for or right before bed, to right before when you're going to lift a weight or right before you're going to execute a skill. Always make your thought positive. Don't ever think I can't do this, or tell yourself little negative things just before you'll be performing your task. It's very important to stay focused and to stay positive. A post-training routine. Now, a post-training routine is a routine you do after your training sessions or after your competitions. It could include something like reflecting on your training. So how your training went, how your competition went, what you can do better, things that you need to focus on for the next session, or just basically going through your week as a whole. It could include something like stretching. Stretching is a very good post-training routine which a lot of athletes do, not just for muscle recovery but also to calm their mind. Reflecting on competition, that's another great way of a post-training or post-competition routine, is basically having a few minutes by yourself, thinking how your competition went, looking at things that you could have changed, as well as things that you can do better in your next competition. This could also be you sitting with your coach discussing your competition. Some people have a post-training shake. Some people even use recovery methods like Epsom baths, ice baths, or warm baths to help them recover. The body likes routine and it helps provide structure. This is why it's so important to have a routine, to practice a routine, and then to stick to a routine.